Mm, we can do that for now.
Okay. Go ahead and do that.
There
There
we
we go.
are.
Yay!
We are now live. Woo woo.
Yes. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Gaia's Mysterious Corner. I'm your host, Gaia.
I'm your co-host Mellow Man, and yes, we are well aware that the YouTube is not Guy's Mysterious Corner, but we're working on it. We're working on it.
Yes. So, we're glad to see that y'all were able to find your way back to us. Um, Today, we're going to have an episode that is called The Green Bicycle Murder. And with this, myself, as well as Melloman, we have done a lot of research on this. Sorry it's taken a while to get everything compiled together.
And speaking of getting things compiled together and having to take some time, we want to take this moment to plug a new sponsor that we
Yes.
have accrued over this little bit of time we've had to take away so we could do the research and stuff for this show. And that is the River Willow. If you guys are looking for crystals or gems like amethyst or crazy lace agate or blue lace agate or stuff along those lines, and you believe and know that the crystals have powers that just,
For healing and
yeah, that aren't able to actually be explained, but they do have powers and they do work. But if you're ever in the North Carolina region and you run into that little situation, we invite you to stop by the River Willow and just have a look around.
I know for my birthday, I've gotten the most gorgeous water bottle from there. It's got all the little tumbles in the bottom of all the crystals. We've got what 20 some crystals ourselves we use for like our chakras and for healing, for meditation. So yes, please stop by the River Willow. They
Oh,
are amazing.
they're well worth the trip. I
Yes.
can tell you that. And And just so everybody is aware, this case takes place a long time ago.
And
a long time ago.
It took place in the 1990s
Yes.
in the UK.
Yes, that's the big catch right there. Is this was not something that happened here in the States. This happened in the UK.
So it was really big. Like,
this case to this day still has a lot of controversy in it.
Which, now at the end, if you want to give us some comments, you can leave comments on here, on YouTube, or you can also go to Gaius Mysterious Corner at gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Spotify and Anchor.
Yes.
And leave comments or voice messages. I welcome them every day, but I stay kind of much on top of that.
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear from our listeners, and if you guys have a case that you want us to do the research on and have an episode on, we welcome those ideas as well. Because I'm telling you right now, it's a head scratcher every week on what we're going to do, because there's so much that we can do. Sometimes it's nice to have a little guidance.
Yeah, which now in the first few episodes, like you can tell which one of us kind of did the research and which one of us didn't. But this, I think we both kind of jumped full-fledged into this 2 feet, and we come together with. I had my own separate research where you had yours, and we compiled all of it together, and I can't wait to get into it. So let's dive in.
Okay. Over 100 years ago, on a cloudy summer evening near the quaint Lancashire village of Little Stretton, a young woman named Bella Wright was murdered.
We're going to start off with her background, and then we'll get into the suspect's background, and then what happened. Correct?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, you need to learn to but anyway, let's take a moment to find out what we know about Bella Wright.
All right. So, Annie Bella Wright was born on July 14th, 1897. She was the oldest of 7 children born to an illiterate farm laborer, Kenneth, I believe that's how you say his name, and his wife, Marianne. She lived in a small cottage in the village of Stoughton. I'm so sorry for butchering that. Just outside of
Lancaster.
Well, I wanted to say Lancaster, but that doesn't look quite like Lancaster.
I know, but you know how it is. They spell stuff a little differently than we do.
They do. The family moved frequently around Lancastershire due to the nature of Kenneth's work. After Bella had finished her schooling in Wanlop, her family eventually settled in the small village. Her father worked for the local farm as a cowman, and her brother was a field laborer.
Yeah, and see, I found that kind of interesting that they say cowman, because over here we call them cowboys. So cowman, cowboy. I don't know if that was the same thing, or if over there when you say cowman, that's all you take care of.
The cowman kind of makes me think of ranch hand. So you pretty much did a lot of the work on the farm and the ranch, or what we would call ranch here, as far as the farm. You took care of the cattle, the horses, and stuff like that. So now that we have gotten that covered, let's see what kind of person Life Bella had. She was described as a very social, independent, and attractive young woman.
Okay.
She was very friendly and often enjoyed day trips and outings with her co-workers. Bella was also a very moderate woman before the war. Women were mostly seen as homemakers.
Which from back then, that's just how women were.
Right. They really were. Even here.
Well, see,
That's
that's one thing I want our listeners to take into consideration is the era this happened in how the people are looked at back then.
And things have changed. I mean, too, you got to think the country, because I know over there things are a lot different than they were here, even in that time era. So, as the war concluded, women were becoming more independent. They were working in factories and socializing with other women. A woman had more freedoms. These young ladies had been awakened to a new phase of, I guess you'd say, modernism.
Yeah.
Women's rights and a relaxation of
previously strict morals, like the
Yeah.
way that everything used to be so strict on the women. Now they've relaxed that a little bit because they've had to jump in and help the war efforts because all the men were off fighting war, so they needed the women to step up and be men
and do like the men's jobs and things like that. Voting rights for women were just around the corner, in part thanks to the women's suffrage movement.
And that is a whole podcast in itself.
Right.
But it was
a big thing.
That was what led to the ability to women to vote in the UK.
Well, and actually, if you think about it, I think that's probably around the time it started here some. It wasn't a big thing yet here, but it...
Yeah, it took longer for it to take effect and be a thing over here than it did over there.
But see, because it started there, I'm pretty sure our ladies here were like, well, if they can do it, so can we. Kind of a deal. They were not about to relinquish their place in the world for the boredom of the kitchen sink.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, they're out, they're doing what they wanted to do. They're not stuck in the house. It's not the same thing every day.
They're working. They're being a contribute to their family.
And they're out making friends and socializing, and it's a whole different era for women.
It really is. Let's see. They talked about one of the best times for the British women, minus the oppressive monarchy.
Well, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, the monarchy was starting to release a little bit of its stranglehold because of the war.
Yeah.
And having to rally everybody back together and rebuild and all that good jazz.
Bella's two closest friends were sisters, Sally and Gertrude Ward. And Gertrude just kind of threw me. Sorry. Because of a previous podcast that I actually was listening to that had that name, and that just...
Yeah. Oh, Gertie.
Oh, no. I've gotten to where I don't like the name, but it's an old-fashioned name. It was rumored that Bella had an unofficial fiancé.
I love that term.
Unofficial. Archie Ward, which now that makes me think. Now, is Archie like maybe Sally and Gertrude's brother, cousin, relative of some sort?
He was the brother of the two sisters. They were sisters. He was the brother, and Bella was supposedly engaged to him.
That would be understanding why she was friends with Sally and Gertrude, or in this case, Gertie, whatever you want to call her. Archie was a sailor in the Royal Navy and serving offshore as a Navy stoker aboard the HMS Diadem. Ooh.
Okay, now.
Okay.
Excuse me. I will interject here because I'm not sure everybody that's listening will know what a stoker is. Okay, a stoker back in those days, they still relied on steam power. And how do you make steam power? You burn coal, correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's what the stoker did. It fed the boilers with coal.
So that's what they did with like
So-
old trains and like Titanic and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
Okay.
So when they say they're a Navy stoker, it's basically he was a boiler room engineer. He sat down in the boiler room and fed the boiler coal.
Okay. So he had a pretty much dangerous job.
Yeah. Yeah. To an extent, he did.
Because if it was to, let's say, explode, he'd be the first one to be killed.
Well, you also got to think if they took a torpedo, he was the first one in danger because he was right there in the bulkhead where everything just.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's bad. Which was a training ship out of Portsmouth.
Portsmouth. Yeah.
It was also said that Bella had caught the eye of another man. From a conversation with her mother and colleagues, it was stated that Bella had confided that a young officer had fallen in love with her. She also told her mother that the officer rode a tool and had been paying her compliments. The Ward sisters also mentioned a soldier who would sometimes wait for Bella as she made her way home from work.
Okay.
Which that just...
Well, it kind of sounds stalkerish in a way. It also sounds like somebody who is really smitten with somebody.
Yeah.
So there's...
And I get it because as a woman, especially when your fiance is out on leave, working as a soldier, and this, I guess, what used to be an officer or is an officer or whatever kind of officer he might be, it didn't really say, is smitten with you and paying you compliments, you're going to feel very, oh, well, I am pretty, or yes, I can be loved or whatever.
Right.
So.
Now that we've told you all that, guess what?
Okay. What's up?
There's so much more. Now we're going to tell you what we could find out about the man that the cops think did it. His name is Ronald Light. On October 19th, 1885, Ronald Vivian Light. Vivian.
back in those days, and even now, I have actually met some men where they had like their mother or grandmother's name in their name.
Well, I
like
mean,
Vivian, Bonnie, Stacy.
I understand that, but at the same time, hearing a man that's named Vivian, okay, I understand it's his middle name, but still, hey Vivian, what?
True.
But that's nowadays. Back then, it was
common.
common. It's just like there used to be a man named Shirley or something along them lines, And it's
unique to see some of the gentlemen's names back in those eras.
Yeah, but it just cracked me up. I had to chuckle a little at Vivian. Sorry, y'all. But Ronald Vivian Light was born the son of a wealthy civil engineer. Ronald and his mother lived alone following the death of his father during the war. It was later revealed that his father had quite probably committed suicide during the early years of the war, possibly as a result of his son's behavior.
Well, see, now that makes me question something. How would they know that he actually committed suicide? Like, that wasn't something people would think. Well, he killed himself.
Well...
And how did they know that it was because of their son's behavior? It's just a...
Well, see, that's we're fixing to get into a little bit of what Ronald's behavior was in his childhood.
Okay.
So you'll kind of understand why they said he probably might have committed suicide because of the way his son behaved. Okay, in 1902, Ronald Light had been expelled from the respected Oakham School at the age 17 following allegations of improper conduct in that he lifted a little girl's skirt over her head. At 17, he's doing this now. Around the time of the war, he admitted to improper conduct with an 8-year-old girl and was brought up on charges of attempted sexual activity with a 15-year-old girl. He was later fired from his civilian position working on the railways after allegations of arson and vandalizing station property with indecent graffiti.
That right there, why would you kill yourself over your son's behavior? Wouldn't you want to have him locked up, committed, treated?
You also got to think of what time this is. Remember, somebody being told that that's how their son's behaving, that is a reflection on them. They feel
True.
They feel embarrassed.
No, but too,
and ashamed.
But too, and knowing a lot of like the murder cases that you and I have looked into and stuff like that, parents in those days, they would have killed their child to keep them from doing harm to others, or done what we would have got swept under the rug and lock them in the attic or the basement because of the way they are.
Yeah, but you know that some people didn't respond the way you would think they would.
Okay, I understand.
In May 1910, Light purchased a green BSA folding bicycle from Orton Brothers in Derby. This bicycle was a distinctive green color with an uncommon coaster brake, which pretty much means that if you push backwards on the pedal, you can continue to coast, but it's not going to let you spin backwards.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
And the kind of the way some bikes are now.
Yeah, but back then that was unique. It wasn't something that was common on every bicycle. Okay? And another little tidbit of information on this bicycle that made it unique is it was a folding bicycle.
I was going to say now BSAs, now they are folding.
Yeah, that is a folding bicycle. At approximately the same time, he became a member of the Buxton-based Territorial Company of the Royal Engineers following the outbreak of the First World War.
Oh, man.
So this is World War I.
Okay.
Light underwent training at Chatham, Newark, and Ripon. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in February of 1915. Before being deployed to the Western Front, Light relinquished his commission in the Royal Engineers on July 1st, 1916, at the suggestion of his commanding officer. So you have your commanding officer sitting here telling you, no, you don't need to take command in this situation. So why, what was such a big thing that the commanding officer was like, no, you don't need to be in command? That's something that's bugged me about this one too.
Okay.
So, anyway, he returned to the ranks as a gunner in the Honorable Artillery Company. He was court-martialed in 1917 for forging move orders. So now he's in the military forging orders.
My question, which I know a lot of it back then, they weren't as well organized as they would be now, but how do you get in there and forge your commanding officers? You know, when you get
orders to move, yeah. I didn't understand that part either. It's
like, how?
Apparently it was something that could be done back then, but you will not get away with that today. That is for a definite. But after 3 years of active service, Light was classified as suffering from severe shell shock and partial deafness and sent back to England to undergo psychiatric treatment. Following recuperation at several army hospitals in England, Light returned to live with his mother in Highfield Street, which was in Lancaster. He was demobilized in January 1919 and would later claim to have been sent home a broken man.
So, like, he may have seen things in the war, but the things that he was doing is what kept him from being able to be a productive person in the military.
Yeah. I mean, the things that he was doing.
Like the forging.
Yeah, all of
yeah.
that. The negative stuff that he was doing was keeping him from being productive in the military.
So, now we're going to kind of get into the start of the day of everything. Bella's work and commute.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about what Bella did for work and how she commuted, or how far she had to commute back and forth to work and how.
Yes. So Bella, like I said, was working and commuting. In 1917, like many women in Britain, Bella, who was born 19, or was now 19, I'm sorry, became a factory worker to help with the war efforts. She spent approximately 2 years making shoes, gloves, and hosiery.
So stuff that they would need in the war, gloves, shoes, hosieries like socks and stuff like that.
Yes. In February of 1919, Bella was hired as a factory hand at a highly successful tire manufacturer that was based at St. Mary's Mill on the River Soar in the city. The company was Bates Rubber Works. Bella worked late shifts at the factory, mostly between approximately 2 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, so kind of what we would consider a second shift job.
Yes, about a second shift. Regularly cycled around 5 miles to and from work each day.
Okay, so she regularly biked 5 miles to and from work every day. So it's 5 miles to work, 5 miles back.
Yes.
Okay.
On this particular day, she was out running errands. According to Bella's mother, Marianne, Bella woke up around 2:30 p.m., which seems normal considering, she worked the night shift.
Right.
Because if you think about it, back in those times, we didn't have day shift, night, like one first shift, second shift. It was either you worked daytime or you worked the nighttime. So that would sound about a good time for her to be waking up. As she was working the late shift at work and didn't get home until late the evening before, Saturday the 5th was her day off.
Okay.
So
we're running up into her day off. She's on her day off. She's got errands that she's got to get done, and okay.
Yeah. So the waking up at 2:30, it's she slept in a little.
Right. Well, I mean, with her working
schedule,
that second shift job, that'd be about a normal time to get up.
Yeah. So Bella was planning on writing a few letters to friends, including one to her boyfriend, Archie Ward. Marianne reminds Bella that her cousin had come to visit and is staying with her uncle George's cottage in the neighboring village in Golby, whatever. Golby. Ugh, I can't speak. Bella's plans to visit her uncle, cousin, his wife, and their newborn baby after posting her letters. This is the last time Bella will speak to her mother.
Which is kind of sad if you think about it. And it's just the last time she spoke to her mother was her mother telling her, hey, you need to not forget you got these things to do today.
Yeah.
And then that's it. That's the last time you talk to your daughter, and you don't ever get to say, I love you, goodbye, or nothing.
Yeah. And it makes you think, well, why didn't she get up earlier in the day to do all this stuff? You got to remember she worked night shift and got off really late. So Bella set off on her bike toward the local post office in Evington Village. She luckily meets the local post mistress, Kathleen. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you said
Kathleen Powers.
Bicycling or the opposite way who kindly offers to post Bella's letters for her.
So she ran into the postmistress. The postmistress was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to the post office. You got stuff to do. Why don't you just let me take them and post them for you?
And it sounds like, what we would know when you get close to your postmistress or mister.
Well, yeah.
Small community, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
So it's here, let me help you out.
Right.
So, too, back then, I'm pretty sure everybody was very friendly with one another.
Oh, I'm sure.
Bella's hands over her letters and the money to cover the cost of the postage. Before setting off toward her uncle's cottage, Bella returns home to pick up a raincoat due to the slight change in the weather.
Okay, so she had to go back home and pick up a raincoat. So it's either it got cloudy and it looked like it was going to rain and she went and got her raincoat, or somebody said something about it going to rain and she went and got a raincoat.
Right. Well, she leaves her home and heads towards Galby. Broken down on July 5th of 1919, by all accounts, Wright and Light meet by chance on July 5th, 1919.
Right.
At around approximately 6:45ish, as she rode her bicycle to the village of Galby, where her uncle George Measures lived. Bella's rear wheel had developed a problem and she had to stop. Let's see. Whistlet taking a look at her bicycle. A man also cycling stops to help Bella. This man is Ronald Light.
Okay, so we've already covered a little bit of Ronald and how he's already been a little too touchy-feely with girls that are a little young, and how he's been in the military and all this good jazz. And now she's running into Ronald Light at a crucial moment where she's broke down.
Yeah. In court, Ronald said that Bella flags him down and says asks him if he has a spanner. If you don't know what a spanner is, it is a type of tool to help fix like your chain, your brake pad, for that particular type of bike back then.
Right.
Because it was unique and different, and you always want to make sure your tires are tightened and everything like that, because it can cause a big problem. He wasn't carrying any of his tools, but had a look at the bicycle and fixed it the best he could to kind of help her out.
Right.
Having learned in their brief conversation of Wright's intended destination of Galby, Light offered to accompany her on her journey. It isn't known if she accepted this offer or if he simply decided to do it anyway.
Which, would kind of fit with the way we know, or what we know of Ronald anyway, is he would have just done it because he was going that direction, or so he says that he was going in that direction. So he was just going to ride beside her anyway. And
her being, a teenager, even though, now granted, we look at 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds as considered adults. Really, in aspect, they're not. They're still kids, especially to us mothers. I know to some fathers, like, it don't matter how old your child gets, it's still your kid.
Well, I was fixing to say, to a parent, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a child, whether you're 6 or 76.
Yeah,
you're
still and I know back in those times, children got married at very young ages, helped on farms, and then like in here so far, because of the war efforts and everything. So
right.
But to me, that's still a baby. She's still a child. And I'm a mother of kids myself, so I look at that. That's still a baby. She still had a long life to go. Regardless, several individuals' testimonies confirm them riding next to each other at this time. Uncle George's cottage, after approximately 15 minutes of riding together, Bella and Ronald arrive at her Uncle George's cottage. Bella's Uncle George Measures was a gruff-looking man who had a wooden leg.
Yeah, so 1919 wooden leg. It was literally a peg leg.
Yeah.
This man was walking around with a peg leg.
Yeah, they didn't have the prosthetics like we do now.
Right.
Which I think from there they moved up to a wooden leg that was carved to look like a foot and a leg, and then we got into the prosthetics. So
yeah, but from the pictures that I've seen of George Measures, he literally had a peg leg. There was no, it looked like a leg and a foot. It was a peg leg.
Kind of like a pirate.
Kind of.
Yeah. He was a road worker by trade. While taking delivery of groceries, George noticed a man of an unique pea green bicycle wearing a gray flat cap waiting outside his house. He had a raincoat folded over the handlebars. He questioning the grocer, who explains to George that he saw the man riding with Bella into the village and assumed they were together.
Which, back then it would probably be an easy assumption to make.
Somewhat unamused that his niece appeared to be keeping company with young men with List. Her boyfriend was always at sea. He asked Bella about the man upon his return to the lounge. Bella assured her uncle that she did not know him at all, though she had met him riding on the road to Galbury.
Golby.
Thank you. Y'all, I'm going to be butchering that name all night. That poor little town. George later informed officers he liked neither the look nor the mannerisms of Light, and that his niece had informed him she had only encountered this individual that evening, stating, "Oh, him? I don't know him at all. He's been riding alongside me for a while, a few miles, but he isn't bothering me at all. He's just chatting about the weather." Although Wright remarked to her uncle that Light had behaved like a perfect stranger.
So I want to ask, since you are a female, what does that terminology mean? A perfect stranger. What is a perfect stranger?
Well, I'm thinking in those terms, like in that day and time, a perfect stranger is like a perfect gentleman. Like, kind, sweet, making sure you get where you need to go. You're a young lady by yourself.
I don't quite think that was his intention, but
no,
I get it.
But
okay.
in her eyes, he's being a well-mannered young man. He's making sure I get there safely, that I'm not being taken advantage of, kind of a thing.
Okay.
In her company, just before leaving his cottage, she jokingly informed him, "I hope he doesn't get too boring," before adding, "I shall try and give him the slip." When Wright exited her uncle's cottage and approached her bike, Light was overheard greeting her with the remark, "Bella, you have been a long time. I thought you had gone the other way." At approximately 8:45 to 8:50-ish p.m., remind you now, this is dark time.
Right.
Bella finally waved goodbye to her family and began pushing her bike up the street toward the church. As she walked away from the house, the stranger joined her in pushing his bike up the hill in the same direction. They appeared to chat as they both mounted their bikes and rode out of sight and out of the village. Bella and Ronald leave Galby together.
So at this point, they have done a lot of stuff, and a lot of people have seen both Bella and Ronald together.
Yes.
Riding at this point in time during the day. And that can't be discredited. I mean, there's so many witnesses that have at least seen that much.
Yes. Now we're going to get to the part where they are parting their ways. According to Ronald White.
Ronald Wright.
But see, now that's where I thought his last name was Light.
No.
And hers was Wright. I think that's where we might have made a typo there. Yes, we did, because his name is Ronald Light. That's my bad. I'm so sorry for that. He and Bella go their separate ways when they reach the junction between Kings Norton. He heads back towards Lancaster via Galby Lane, while Bella continues to Burton Overy Lane. Bella chooses to go a longer route back home. This may be due to her broken bike. The shortest route was rather steep, so maybe Bella chose the longer route due to it being flat.
Possibly, considering, one way's uphill, downhill, and she's got a broken bike and don't want to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Although, I don't know, in my mind, I would be like, nope, shortest route. I don't care if I have to push it. Just get me home quick.
Okay, but you got this guy that won't leave you alone. And you want to sit here and go the same route he's going. No, she's trying to get away from him.
Yeah, I know.
Approximately 30 minutes after Wright and her companion had ridden away from Measure's cottage, Wright's body was found on Gartree Road, part of the Via Divina Roman Road, by a farmer named Joseph Cowell. Her body was discovered alongside her bike, and her face was extensively bloodied, with deep gouge marks visible on her cheeks and jaw. Surmising the girl may have been run off the road by a motorist, Cowell initially deduced she had fallen from her bike and fatally injured herself.
Well, see, now that makes me question, okay, so they said goodbye to one another, and apparently he did go his separate way, and she went the other way. But 1919, it doesn't sound like there would have been really many cars on the road in 1919. Unless it was like one of those, like, the old Fords, like when they first come out with the, what I'm talking about, the Model Ts and stuff like that. It was one of those rare moments where you had to really have some money to have a car.
Well, I mean, you had to have money back then anyway to own any kind of motor vehicle, because back then you had to have like $200 or $300 to buy a car, and that's a lot of money to somebody back then.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I guess because of the time and where it's at, it sounds like they would have been like horse and buggy drawn kind of carriages. Which even that could have knocked her off.
Well, I mean,
her bike.
they got bicycles and little motorized bikes. They're not really motorcycles, but they're makeshift motorcycles back then.
Right.
Cowell proceeded to nearby Great Glen to report his discovery to the local policeman, Constable Alfred Hall, who phoned a doctor in Bilsden. Dr. Williams arrived at Hall's residence, and the trio returned to Little Stretton, where the doctor instructed that the girl's body be moved to a nearby unoccupied house upon Cowell's trap. So you have a nearby house, but it is unoccupied.
Well, that to me says either A, the family who owned that home either has passed away, or the people who may have killed her, or I don't know, like they're out of town.
Well, I mean, yeah, back then they could have been on vacation. They could have been dead. They could have been away at war.
That too. I didn't think about it. Yeah, the young gentleman could be at war.
But nobody ever really says too much more about the unoccupied house. You know, once you get past this cursory part of the investigation and everything, you never hear anything else about the unoccupied house. So,
And two, you'd think, well, how'd they get in? I mean, which I know back in those times, you felt safe. You could leave your doors unlocked.
I mean, for the most part, yeah, just depending on what part of town you was in and how many neighbors you had.
Right. That just seemed strange. I'm sorry.
But at the scene, PC, which is police chief or police constable, I'm sorry, back then or back there in the UK, it's a constable, which was always weird to me. But anyway, PC Hall found what he later described as smears of blood on the top bar of the field gate. Although he discovered no human footprints on either side of the gate, nonetheless, a dead carrion crow was discovered in the field close to this gate. Dr. Williams had also made a cursory candlelight examination. Let me say that again. Cursory candlelight examination.
Well, okay, so did they not have in that little particular area, like, electricity, or what little they had, it wasn't enough, so they had to use candlelight, like lanterns or something like that? Maybe?
Well, see, I don't even know how they didn't have a lantern as much as they've done. They were supposed to be, you know, you're in the war. They were like second, you know, compared to the U.S. I mean, once the U.S. joined, that was it. It was a wrap. It was over with. But the UK was supposed to be top dogs, and then the U.S. joined. They got bumped down because the U.S. was a little bit more advanced than they were. But you would think doing something like this, you would at least have something that would allow you to see more than a candle.
Yeah.
But anyway, the scene before ordering Wright's body to be moved to the nearby unoccupied house, having agreed with Cal's initial assumption that she had died in a simple bike accident, dying from a combination of loss of blood and a head injury. Yeah, depending on how bad it actually was. But once I get a little further, you're going to see that that wasn't the case.
My only question is how big of a rock was there that she would have hit?
And see, that's another thing. They never really said that there was any big rocks in the way, but there was a blood smear on the top of the gate.
So maybe she flew off her bike and hit the gate with her head.
Yeah, that could be an assumption that would have been made. But PC Hall returned home following the discovery and spent a rather restless night, feeling that details somehow did not add up. And I got to give it to this man. He really didn't just, you know, go to a scene, go, okay, this is what it is, and that's it. He actually felt like something wasn't adding up. He returned to the scene early the next morning, where Bella had not yet been removed from, to search the signs of foul play. A careful search uncovered a .45 caliber bullet 17 feet from where Wright's body had lain, slightly embedded in the ground by the imprint of a horse's hoof, which had not yet been removed from the scene. He proceeded to the unoccupied house and washed the congealed blood off the face of Wright, finding a single entry wound beneath the left eye from the distance of 6 to 7 feet, and the bullet had exited the rear of her skull. The dead girl was identified by relatives as Bella Wright, and accident has just become murder.
So that makes you think, because from the one picture that we pulled up during the,
research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had to, like, because, all right, so you might have turned and waved goodbye, proper, like you're supposed to, with kindness. Bye, see you next time, have a good, safe trip back home, whatever. Who's to say he didn't pull a gun out, because that could have been within the right amount of distance for him to have shot her. Or
Well, see, that's
the person
something,
who lived in that house, how far was it from right there? Could they have shot her?
that's something that kind of gets discussed a little in the trial. But just from what I've read, that she was shot from a distance of 6 to 7 feet. That is not
That far.
that far. I mean, that's like throwing a person end to end, a 6-7 foot person end to end, and standing there and shooting somebody that distance. It's not that far. And if you've been in the military, that shot is not that hard.
No.
But a .45 caliber bullet is going to leave a hole. Now, I don't know about a tiny hole, but it's going to leave a hole.
Right. Police inquired, revealed nobody except Wright and her riding companion had been in the vicinity of the Gartree
Yep.
Road at the time of her death. As several people had seen the riding companion, investigators were able to obtain a detailed description of this individual, who was described as being 35 to 40 years old, in age, with a broad, full face.
Kind of like this, broad, full face.
Yeah, you have the broad, full face. Between about 5'7" to 5'9" tall, so about average.
Yeah, about average height.
Average height. He had been wearing a gray suit, a gray cap, collar and tie with black boots. So the typical business-like attire, proper gentleman attire.
Yeah. For
that time era. The chief constable of Lancastershire, police issued appeals in both none of the local and national press, urging this man to come forward and assist them with their inquiries. Nonetheless, these appeals proved unsuccessful.
So you got the police chief going to newspapers and radios and stuff like that to get the word out. Please, if you know anything about this, give us the information and we'll go from there. They're pleading for help and they're not getting nothing. And everybody in town says this is who this is. Why are you just...
yeah.
Thorough.
Yeah. Not a thorough check of all premises where bikes were bought, sold, and repaired for the distinctive green bike also failed. Which, back in that time, I'm pretty sure it wasn't that common. Sometimes it could have been common to have that kind of a bike.
Well, you also got to think records keeping back then sucked.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Nonetheless, on July 10th, a Lancastershire bicycle repairman by the name of Harry Cox. I'm sorry.
Yes, I know. We're so immature sometimes. Harry Cox. I mean,
well,
come on.
And it's like one of the podcasters that I've listened to, the names, sometimes you have to really go back and go, wait, is that a real name?
Yes.
And it really is.
Especially back then.
Because, come on now. Back then, I guess that was common, but still. You think about it nowadays, you are not going to name your child Harry Cox. People are going to be picking on him so bad.
Well, I mean, at one point, I had a landlord that went by the name Dick Pushard, so... Like, that was his legal name, Dick Pushard.
I will have to research that name. I'm sorry. I would have to. Told the police that the previous day he had repaired a bike matching this description. Cox also informed police the man riding this bike had remarked to him of his intentions to go for a ride in the country on that very day.
So, July 10th.
Yeah. That was kind of be like for here, be like a summer day. So
Well, yeah, it would be.
So,
but over there, it's a little different. Weather's a little different. It's not nowhere near as humid, which that really kind of throws you for a flip, considering they're surrounded by water. You'd think they'd be more humid than over here, but
well, that depends exactly where they were at. You know, it could have been just all country, like.
True.
But even with that, though, I mean, their weather is totally different than what it is here.
Right.
Light would later claim not to have known about Wright's death until he had read a Lancaster Mercury's article on July 8th.
So if she was killed on the 5th. He says he was unaware of it till the 8th.
Right.
That's 3 days later.
And, you know, here on the 10th, if you remember, they were talking to or going through, you know, all these places about, hey, have you seen this bicycle? Did somebody come through here for repairs?
Right.
Did you sell one? So, yeah. According to his evidence, he realized the dire predicament he was now in and worried over the matter for some time before deciding to do nothing beyond removing his bike from where he normally stored it to the attic.
Okay, so this girl's dead. I was the last one that was seen with her. What am I going to do? You know what? I ain't even going to stress it. We go put it in the attic. That's it. It's out of sight, out of mind. That's what I'm getting from this dude. And that is not how you do it.
No. And that actually makes you look more suspicious by doing that.
Oh, the more you read into this case, the more you're going to find out whether he really did do it or not, he made himself look very suspicious.
He claimed he had failed to come forward in response to the police and media appeals to avoid worrying his ailing mother.
So you're going to avoid going to the cops just so your sickly mother doesn't get worried. What fucking sense does that make?
Well, and if you think about it in that time, okay, you're trying to take care of your ailing mother. You don't need her to just up and die on you until everything is handled or whatever.
But you sitting here being accused of murder, wouldn't you want your name cleared as quickly as possible?
Well, yes, you would think so.
So...
But in those times, I mean, we don't really know...
Excuse me.
You know, how that's going to go about. But, however, in October of 1919, Light took his bike from the attic before proceeding to file off the serial numbers from the frame, seat, lug, and he removed the BSA logo from the fork.
Okay, so now he's starting to get concerned because now he's getting up there and he's filed off serial numbers and identifiable markers like the BSA logo. So now he's getting worried. Now he's getting scared.
Yes. He took the bike to Upperton Road Bridge in Lancaster, where he first detached the rear wheel because the mechanic had a distinctive back pedaling brake.
Right.
Which is the special bike back then. Very rare, I guess. Then continued dismantling the bike, each section exceeding the rear wheel.
That was except the rear wheel, not exceeding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Except the rear wheel with its coaster brake was thrown into the river Soar. Follow-up investigations would bring forth a witness, laborer Samuel Holland, who confirmed he had stood and witnessed Light dismantle and throwing the parts into the river from the Upperton Road Bridge, I guess in the city
some 3 months previously.
Okay, so 3 months prior to all this man sat here and watched as somebody threw parts of a bicycle in the river and didn't think nothing about it.
But yet there's a young lady that's been killed.
That's what I'm getting at. So you're going to sit here and you're going to watch a man on a bridge throw parts of a bicycle in the river and not think nothing about it. Just, oh, that's neat. And then 3 months later, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, come to think of it, I did see that. I seen it, and he was throwing parts of his bicycle in the river, and it didn't make sense to me, but I thought it was okay. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How stupid do you got to get? But here's the good part. On February 23rd, 1920, so it's been close to a year.
So
about 7 months.
Yeah.
About 7 months. Enoch Whitehouse was guiding a horse-drawn barge loaded with coal along the River Soar. The tow rope of the barge snagged the frame of the green bike, bringing it to the surface of the canal. Other pieces of the bike were discovered. Examining the frame of the bike, investigators discovered that although the serial number had been filed off both the frame and the seat lug, and the BSA brand name had been filed off the fork, a faint serial number
sorry, y'all.
was still visible on this bike on the inside front fork. So he got all of that and forgot one thing. One serial number he forgot.
Which is, honestly, that's a lot of murders thing. They forget one thing.
It's like one of our podcast people that we listen to. I love a dumb criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that you should have thought about if you're going to sit here and go through and file off all these serial numbers and remove BSA stickers off of it so it's not recognizable. You should have thought about the one on that particular part of the fork. But anyway, inquiries at businesses that bought, sold, or otherwise repaired bikes revealed this bike had been bought by Ronald Light 9 years previously.
So 9 years he bought the bike. It was his only transportation, and he uses it in a murder.
Light was arrested on March 4th, 1920 at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, where he had secured a position teaching mathematics 2 months previously.
So he was a teacher now.
Yes, and he was teaching mathematics in a school.
So that right there tells me that they can't really do, which they couldn't, but they didn't do like a good background check.
No. See, back then people could get away with a lot. You could commit so many crimes in one state, go to another state, and that state was none the wiser for months. If it ever got caught on. Usually they didn't catch a lot of that until the mid-'80s when everything started being integrated together and you could go to like APHIS and stuff like that.
You would think his school, if it's from the same area where he lived, grew up, they would have known, hello, he did this as a kid. You'd have thought.
Well, you would have thought, but they didn't go that far back, apparently. But he was brought to Lancastershire to be charged with the murder of Bella Wright. Initially, Light emphatically denied having ever been in or near Gulby on July 5th. Of course you would.
Yeah.
And he denied meeting Wright on that date. He also initially claimed that to have never owned such a green bike before.
I wonder where we left off at.
Okay, we might have to back up a second, y'all.
Yeah, sorry.
We're recording our podcast in the midst of recording this, so you're going to catch this. This is the fun of being live, y'all. It really is. It's fun. Fun. But what you guys think about it? I know there's at least one extra person on here listening. What you think about it? Huh? Think you did it? You can comment. We'll listen. Got to find out where we left off on the podcast section so we can pick it back up on the...
We're going to pick up... Just back up right here. Just,
Lot was arrested.
yeah. It's going to take a minute to... Okay, wait.
Alright. Lot was arrested on March 4th, 1920 at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, where he had secured a position teaching mathematics 2 months previously. He was brought to Lancashire to be charged with the murder of Bella Wright. Initially, Light emphatically denied having ever been in or near Golby on July 5th, or to meeting Wright on that day. He also initially claimed to have never owned such a green bike before police informed Ronald of a positive link to his having purchased the bike. So here he is already lying to the cops.
Yeah.
No, I didn't own it. I didn't own it. Oh, okay, I guess I did own it because now y'all know for sure I did own it because you got this serial number and found out that I bought one. So now you got to start backpedaling and figure out what to do, right? He also claimed to have sold the bike to an individual whose name he could no longer recall several years previously. Nonetheless, he was identified by eyewitnesses as the person who had been riding alongside Bella on the evening of her death, which there was witness after witness after witness in the investigation that said, yep, that was him. He was riding beside her all day.
Yep.
So there's just too much of this, I'm telling you. Included by her uncle, Cox also identified Light from a police identity parade, which I would assume is like a police lineup, as being the individual who had repairs conducted on the distinctive green bike on the day of Wright's death. His mother's maid, Mary Elizabeth Webb, informed investigators that that on July 5th, Light had not returned home until approximately 10 p.m. So he did not get back home until 10 p.m. Which is kind of concerning in this case.
Yeah.
Claiming his bike had broken down and that he had to push it home, he also sold or destroyed all the clothing he had worn that day. On March 19th, additional pieces of evidence were found. An army pistol holster conclusively identified as having been issued to Light, and a dozen live .45 caliber bullets were also dredged from the same canal in which the sections of the bike had been retrieved. The bullets were found to precisely match the spent bullet found at the crime scene. So you have a revolver holster that they can conclusively prove belongs to you in the river with the bicycle parts. You have unspent rounds that conclusively match the rounds that were found at the crime scene.
Right. I mean, and you thought you got all your serial numbers off your bike, but in actuality, you missed one.
Right.
You're being a very dumb criminal.
Right. And so at this point, myself, I think that he did it.
Right. I mean,
There's so many things that say, hey, this motherfucker did it. But this is one of those cases that have made me mad. Because this poor woman did not stand a chance in hell.
and we're having, and the thing is in a lot of these cases, the victim do not have a voice or have somebody like an advocate for them, and that makes me sad. The trial of Ronald Light opened in Lancaster's castle on June 8th of 1820.
1920.
I'm so sorry. It's been one of those days, y'all. He was tried before Mr. Justice Horged.
Hortage, yeah.
That is a very strange name. Okay.
It is, but it is one of them 1919 names, I'm telling you.
And entered a plea of not guilty.
Which we kind of figured he would do.
Prosecution team considered of Sir Gordon Hewart,
which was the Attorney General at the time.
Right. Norman Burkitt and Henry Maddox. Okay.
Right, and that was the team that was supposed to defend
For Bella.
Bella.
Okay. So she was being their, or they were being her advocate, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
He was defended by Sir Edward Marshall.
Now that is who defended Ronald. That was Ronald's lawyer.
Okay. The prosecution agreed that a mile west of Galby, for unknown reasons, Wright had fled from Lights, panicked and headed south on an inferior road that was a possible route home, but not the shortest one. Light took an alternative route with intentions to ambush her and had laid in wait as a gate where he shot her once before fleeing from the scene. To support this argument, eyewitnesses and other individuals were introduced to testify as to having seen Light in the company of Wright on the evening of her murder, to his ownership of the bike, and his later efforts to both remove identifying marks on the bike and disposing of the bike, the revolver holster, the unspent bullets of the same caliber as the bullets used to kill Bella in the River Soar, in obvious efforts to conceal physical evidence linked him to the murder. Furthermore, upon his arrest, Light was processed to tell the police numerous lies until confronted with either proof or
inconsistencies.
Thank you. In his claims.
Right. Now, Edward Marshall Hall focused on the lack of obvious motive and absence of witness to the death to the death. Marshall Hall also raised doubt over the bullet found near Bella. Mr. Brown said he suggested it could have come from a rifle. He also suggested it bore marks of a ricochet. Moreover, he pointed out such a bullet may have nothing to do with Bella, and also that her death was perhaps a tragic accident. Two girls, Muriel Nuni, 14, and Valeria Caven, 12, would also testify for the prosecution that approximately 3 hours before Light had encountered Wright, he had pestered them as they rode their bikes close to where Wright's body was subsequently found. Okay, so a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old testified that he was pestering them around the spot where they found Bella's body.
So he had been in that area the whole time. and was making rounds around it.
Apparently.
Until he found his victim.
Right.
So my question is, from his previous stuff in school where he was like sexually trying to assault the girls, things like that, if that's not what he was trying to do. Like, was he trying to find that one that he could abduct and, assault sexually or...
Yeah, see, that's what I was trying to point out during our research, that this girl didn't have a chance. And once we finish getting through the trial, you're really going to see this poor woman didn't stand a chance back then. And I really feel sorry for her and her family for not getting the closure that they deserved.
Yeah.
But at his insistence and on the advice of his lawyer, Lott opted to testify in his defense. So he's testifying in his own defense, saying stuff like, when Bella Wright was murdered, I knew from newspaper reports the next day that she was the girl I had been with just before she died. I knew the police wanted to question me. I became a coward again. I never told a living soul what I knew. I got rid of everything that could have connected me with her because I was afraid. I see now, of course, that I did the wrong thing.
What you think?
Yeah. In his testimony, Lott conveyed himself as a well-spoken demeanor. He readily admitted to having lied to the police upon his arrest, before essentially admitting to everything testified to by other witnesses presented at his trial, but his possession of the service revolver and Wright's killing, claiming they had parted company at a junction close to Kings Norton soon after she had left her uncle's cottage in his company. So he's admitted to everything but killing her and the service revolver. That's what I'm understanding, is he has admitted to everything but that. On cross-examinations, Light admitted that the holster, bullets, and bike recovered from the canal were indeed his, but claimed he had disposed of these items in a panic. Excuse me, if you're in a panic, you're not going to take the time to take it the fuck apart.
No.
And throw it piece by piece into the river. You're not going to take that time if you're panicked.
And one, I mean, come on. If you were going to take it apart, you would have done it at home and then transported it.
And you wouldn't have filed serial numbers off.
I mean, you would have went through every little thing. You'd have tried to burn it.
So that part doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But having read the press coverage surrounding Wright's murder and nothing the general public and media consensus that the man seen riding alongside her on a green bike had been responsible for her death. Well, that's the only logical assumption you could make. He admitting that as an officer in the Army, he had owned a Webley Scott service revolver. However, he claimed that when posted in the Army, posted overseas, he had taken the revolver with him, but not the holster. And that when he had became a casualty, all of his belongings had been left in a casualty clearing station in France in 1918.
So pretty much a year before the murder.
That's what he's claiming. Overall, Light's version of events as he presented them to the court could not be contradicted or disproved in any detail.
Okay.
Despite being subjected to 5 hours of cross-examination, they cross-examined him for 5 hours. They grilled this man for 5 hours on the stand. Okay? He did not contradict himself on any detail. Despite being subjected to 5 hours, despite admitting that the prosecution had produced ample circumstantial evidence, a single occasion proving Light had been in Wright's company shortly before her death. Marshall Hall stressed to the jury his client freely admitted the truth to their testimony before emphasizing the lack of motive for his client to have killed Wright, adding the two had not known each other before their chance encounter on the evening of her death, and she had not been robbed, attacked, or subject to any form of sexual assault. Like that clears you. This woman is dead.
So, who's to say that you didn't kill her before you got the chance to sexually assault her?
That's what I'm saying. Like that gives you an excuse.
Yes.
This woman is dead, and you just, oh well, I didn't rob her. I didn't sexually assault her,
But you did.
but she's dead.
Right. But I mean, you
So
killed her.
explain why couldn't you have come forward and told this? Anyway, Marshall Hall restricted his examination of Light largely to technical matters. He also questioned the testimony of the expert witness on ballistics, the Lancaster gunsmith and gunmaker Henry Clark, who had testified that the bullet which killed Wright had sustained damage that may have been caused by a ricochet, and that the bullet could have easily had came. This is where it's going to mess with you. The bullet could have easily had came from a rifle as well as a revolver.
Wait, what?
So he's saying that the same bullet that can be fired out of a revolver can be fired out of a rifle.
And I know that's to be false. No, but in those days you might have been able to, depending on how they were made, but...
Right. So, you've got all of this that he's sitting here arguing. But my argument is the ricochet. Okay, if it was a through and through, which they say it was, it went in below the left eye and exited the right side of the head. Okay, if that bullet would have impacted anything, it would have messed the bullet up and gave it the illusion that it ricocheted, but it actually didn't ricochet until after it came through her skull and bounced off of something. Then it looked like a ricochet, but that's not. That's more advanced than what they were thinking back then.
Right.
Okay. So, now, easily came from a rifle. Okay, thereby introducing the possibility that a stray shot fired from a distance by another individual could have inadvertently killed Wright, and that as such her death may have been the result of a misadventure. Marshall also argued that a person shot at close range from a service revolver would have sustained much greater damage to their face, where Wright had only a small entry wound beneath her left eye and a larger exit wound on the right side of her head. To this statement, Clark replied, "It depends on the velocity." Marshall Hall argued that this alternate scenario was a more likely explanation of Wright's death. This theory and Light's courtroom demeanor were apparently enough to instill sufficient reasonable doubt within the minds of the jurors and earn Light's acquittal as they deliberated for 3 hours. They took 3 hours to say, "You're not guilty." That's right. You heard me right. I said not guilty. They found this man not guilty, but he had the pistol, he had the sleeve or the case that it went in, he had the bicycle, he destroyed the bicycle parts, he got rid of his clothes, he done everything that screams, "I'm guilty," and they said, "You're not guilty." The verdict on June 11th was cheered by many spectators present within the courtroom.
Wow, not guilty.
Not guilty.
Excuse me?
Yep.
Okay. Wright was buried in the churchyard of St. Mary and All Saints, Stroughton on July 11th of 1919 in a ceremony conducted before several hundred mourners. W.N. Westmore, the vicar of Stroughton. Well, there ain't no R.
Stoughton.
Yeah. Asked all present to reflect on this poor girl who had been taken away from them. Following his acquittal, Light returned to live with his mother in Lancaster, where he initially maintained a somewhat reclusive lifestyle. For a time, he assumed the name Leonard Estelle. Okay. He was fined in December of 1920 for registering under a false name at a hotel where he had been staying with a woman. By 1928, Light was living in
Laysden-on-Sea.
Thank you. On the Isles of Shippery, Kent. In 1934, he married widow Lillian Lester. Ronald Light died on March 15th, 1975.
Correction, May 15th.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
You're right. Correction, it was May 15th of 1975 at the age of 89. His body was cremated at Charing Cemetery.
Crematorium.
Thank you. I was about to say cemetery. Near Ashford. And his ashes was scattered in the crematorium's garden of remembrance. Light had no children of his own, and his stepdaughter had no notion of Light's trial and acquittal until after his death. For several decades following Light's acquittal, his green bike hung on the wall of an
Evington.
Thank you. It's late, y'all. Cycle shop. Although its current whereabouts are unknown.
But you got to stop and think about this. Okay, he got an acquittal. He lived his life, got married, and his stepdaughter didn't even know nothing about the trial, the acquittal, none of that. So living your whole life after you meet this guy and not know nothing about it.
Right. Opinions among criminologists and authorities alike vary as to both Light's guilt and innocence of Wright's murder. The actual circumstances surrounding her death, for example, in his 1930s book, The Green Bicycle Case, Herbert R. Wakefield contains Light had been innocent of Light's death, whereas author Kristen Wendy West concludes in her 1993 book, The Green Bicycle Murder, that Light was extracted from the jury in his trial testimony.
No.
I'm sorry. Guilty and charged. And are adding the
contemporary class structure
plus a degree of sympathy Light had extracted from the jury in his trial testimony had played a significant role in his acquittal. Other writers had put forth views and conjured readings Wright's death, including the possibility that Light killed Wright accidentally while showing her his service revolver, which was inadvertently discharged. I mean, it is a possibility. Or that she was killed by someone else entirely. This accidental killing theory is backed by a note supposedly written by a Lancaster superintendent of police, Levi Boley. 3 days later, after Light's acquittal, Boley's note claims that while in prison awaiting trial, Light confessed the accidental death scenario to him. The
the authenticity of the note, it's been questioned, and there's no way of knowing now whether it was real or not, since, he is dead, she's dead. Most of the people that were tied to this case are probably dead and gone. So you're kind of left to draw your own conclusions on this one. But with everything that I read and all of our research, that man was guilty and he should have been locked up. I don't know how he was able to skirt the system like that with so much of the evidence pointing straight at you, and you walk scot-free. I don't know. That poor girl.
I just feel bad for her because she really didn't get to have a voice. Her family was not able to be her voice.
Yeah, because they were out of it too. They really were.
I mean, and I know they were going through a lot. It had to have been very devastating. So, wow. And he got not guilty.
Not guilty, yeah. That was the biggest thing right there. Not guilty. 3 hours and you come back with not guilty. Why? Because he's a guy? Because he's military?
Right.
And I hate to be that way because, I support our military, our boys and girls that go over and fight. They made us something else. I'm telling you that right now. But I'm not going to sit here and treat you special just because you came from the military and you're not supposed to be able to do stuff like that. You're supposed to be defending our rights and freedoms, not taking life from us.
And see, I support our troops because I have an uncle that's been in the military. I have 2 nephews in the military. I have what I call my adopted daughter. It's my oldest daughter's best friend. Her and her husband both are in the military. Matter of fact, one of them is stationed in Germany right now. So, and then I have my youngest daughter that's wanting to follow in the military steps. So, I support them 100%, but you still got to look at everything as a whole, as an individual person, not as a...
Were there some factors in the background that were red flags? Yes.
Most definitely.
I mean, he was pulling dresses over little girls' heads. That's red flag 1 right there. Hey, something needs to be done about this guy.
And then the inappropriate and sexual assault behavior towards 2 other young girls. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And then he was pestering these other 2 girls. So there's something there.
Yeah.
Somehow.
But we will leave it to you guys. You guys can go do a little bit of your own research and come to your own conclusions if you would like. If you feel that we didn't cover this subject enough, drop us an email. Let us know. Well, if you want us to go deeper, we can try to go deeper. I mean, we went as deep as we could. It took us almost 3 weeks to get this done, and it would have been posted probably 2 days ago, but we went to finish it up, and for whatever reason, 85% of our research that was scripted out kind of just disappeared. So, and yes, you do see us reading from a script in ways that it kind of keeps us on track because we both have ADHD and we get a little distracted because it's like squirrel. Oh,
Very much so. And also, you can go to our Facebook page at Guy's Mysterious Corner and post, and we can have a discussion there. Again, email at gaiasmysteriouscorner@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voice message on Anchor, leave us reviews on Spotify. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Definitely leave us a review on Spotify. If you listen to us on Spotify, we welcome you to come over. It's, of course, Guy's Mysterious Corner. It's not hard, guys. And we love you guys. We sit here and do all this kind of as a side thing for you guys and for us because, we like to sit here and talk about stuff, and it'd be much easier if we had people that listen to us instead of just us talking to each other all the time.
Yeah. So until next time, y'all have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.